David Goggins, the man, the myth, the legend. A name that doesn't just inspire, but strikes fear into laziness itself. He is the human embodiment of discipline, the guy who wakes up at 3 a.m. not because he has to, but because comfort is the enemy. While most people hit the snooze button, he's out there pounding the pavement, clocking in 50 miles before the sun even dares to rise. He doesn't just work out, he destroys workouts, obliterating thousands of push-ups like they're nothing but an afterthought. He stares himself down in the mirror, veins bulging, eyes wild, screaming at his own reflection to stay hard. He doesn't make excuses, he doesn't take breaks, and he sure as hell doesn't indulge in weakness. But what if I told you that one day, the impossible happened? That David Goggins, the king of discipline, the hardest man alive, gave up? It started like any other Monday, a day meant for war, a day where Goggins should have launched himself out of bed like a missile, ready to crush whatever stood in his way. But this time, something felt off. His body wasn't filled with the usual fire. His mind wasn't screaming at him to move. Instead, he felt heavy. His limbs were sluggish, his head foggy, and worst of all, his alarm clock had been ringing for over an hour. The shrill, relentless beeping, normally a battle cry that sent him charging into action, was just noise. Irritating, distant, meaningless noise. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling. It was the first time in years that he had slept past 5 a.m. And worse than that, he had no desire to get up. He tried to fight it, forcing himself to recite the words that had pushed him through Navy SEAL Hell Week, through ultramarathons on broken feet, through endless suffering. Stay hard, stay. But it wasn't working. His body wasn't responding. His mind, usually an impenetrable fortress of willpower, was silent. And then, the unthinkable happened. A thought crept into his mind, one that had no place being there, one that threatened everything he had built his life around. Maybe I'll take a break today. The second the words left his mouth, a chill ran down his spine. It felt unnatural, wrong, like a virus had infected his very soul. Goggins wasn't the type to take breaks. Breaks were for the weak. Breaks were for them, the ones who quit when things got hard. But the more he lay there, the more the thought took root. Maybe just one day, just a few hours, just to reset. His mind, always a relentless drill sergeant, wasn't fighting back. It was agreeing. Dragging himself out of bed, he walked sluggishly to the kitchen. Usually, this was the moment where he'd prepare his signature punishment drink, a disgusting blend of kale, raw eggs, spinach, beets, and some sketchy Stay Hard formula powder that probably wasn't even FDA approved. He didn't drink it because he liked it. He drank it because it was horrible, because suffering was the point. But today, something was different. As he reached for the blender, his eyes drifted, just for a second, to a forgotten corner of the kitchen. And that's when he saw it. A McDonald's bag. It shouldn't have been there. It had no place in his house. His kitchen was a temple of suffering, a shrine to peak human performance. There was no room for processed garbage, for weakness disguised as food. And yet, there it was, sitting there, untouched, waiting. It was from last night. A friend had brought it over, but never showed up. Goggins had meant to throw it away immediately, to remove the temptation before it could even exist. But somehow, it had survived the night. And now, it was calling to him. He stared at the bag, muscles tensed, battling something he had never battled before. Normally, this wouldn't even be a fight. He would have tossed it without a second thought, without even acknowledging its presence. But today he hesitated. His stomach growled, a deep, primal hunger that had nothing to do with nutrition and everything to do with curiosity. Maybe just one bite. The words came out in a whisper, barely audible, but earth-shattering. He reached forward, his fingers trembling slightly as they brushed against the warm, crinkled wrapper. He felt the heat of the burger inside, the scent drifting up to his nose, greasy, salty, rich, a smell he had denied himself for years. He unwrapped it slowly, almost reverently, as if he was opening something sacred. And then, in one swift motion, he took a bite. The world stopped. The moment the soft, sesame seed bun touched his lips, the moment the juicy beef and melted cheese hit his tongue, something inside him broke. His taste buds exploded. The sweet tang of the secret sauce, the crispy snap of the pickles, the perfect blend of grease, salt, and fat. It was heaven. His brain short-circuited. His entire identity, built on struggle, discipline, and suffering, was crumbling. Before he even knew what was happening, the burger was gone. Then the fries. Then the Coke. He sat back in his chair, breathing heavily, heart pounding, hands shaking. His stomach was full, but it wasn't just food sitting in his gut. It was realization, temptation, regret. "Oh my God," he gasped, wiping the grease from his lips. His breathing was ragged, his mind racing. His entire life had been a lie. Is this what I've been missing out on? And just like that, something deep inside David Goggins changed. For the first time in 20 years, David Goggins wasn't fighting the pain. He wasn't battling that ruthless, merciless voice in his head that had always told him to push harder, to go beyond his limits, to suffer because suffering was the only way to be great. No, he had fully surrendered. The walls he had built around his mind, the mental fortress of discipline that had kept him untouchable, had crumbled in the face of something he never thought could break him: comfort. But little did he know, this was just the beginning of his downfall. What happens when the hardest man alive, the human embodiment of suffering, experiences true comfort for the first time? Chaos. Absolute, unforgivable chaos. It wasn't just a burger. It wasn't just a cheap meal. It was a betrayal of everything he stood for, everything he had sacrificed, everything that had turned him into the legend people feared and admired. But in that moment, none of that mattered. In that moment, David Goggins didn't care about being the hardest man alive. He didn't care about ultramarathons, about push-ups, about mental toughness. He just wanted more. At first, he told himself it was nothing. "One burger won't kill me," he muttered, licking the last drop of grease from his fingers, feeling the warmth of a full stomach, a feeling he had denied himself for years. But deep down, something inside him shifted, something that had been buried under years of pain, suffering, and relentless self-punishment had just been awakened. The next day, he didn't wake up at 3 a.m. to run 20 miles. He didn't even wake up at 5 a.m. Instead, when his eyes finally fluttered open, the clock on his bedside table mocked him: 11 a.m., the latest he had slept in decades. And for the first time, his body didn't feel like it had been hit by a truck. No aching muscles, no burning lungs, no exhaustion clawing at his bones. Just pure, sweet, undeserved rest. His first thought should have been rage. He should have thrown himself out of bed, done 500 burpees on the spot, screamed at himself in the mirror until the veins in his forehead popped. But instead, he smiled. And that was mistake number 2. It didn't stop there. Breakfast used to be nothing but raw eggs, bitter black coffee, and whatever horrific concoction of greens he forced himself to chug every morning. But today, David Goggins wanted something else. He grabbed his phone, opened a food delivery app, something he had never touched before, and ordered pancakes. Not just any pancakes. A tower of 12, drenched in syrup, drowning in butter, each bite an explosion of sugar and satisfaction. He took his time, savoring every bite, letting the warm, fluffy goodness melt in his mouth. "I deserve this," he mumbled between mouthfuls, his voice barely recognizable. And then lunch came. The usual routine would have been a grueling workout, a meal so bland and protein-packed, it was more punishment than food. But not today. Today, David Goggins wanted fried chicken. He didn't drive to get it. He didn't run 20 miles to the nearest restaurant like the old Goggins would have. He had it delivered. A massive bucket, extra crispy, extra greasy. He tore through it like a starving man, licking his fingers, ignoring the voice in his head that used to scream at him for even thinking about food like this. By dinner, it was all over. A full pizza feast, extra cheese, stuffed crust, the works. He ate like a man making up for decades of starvation. And the worst part? It felt good. The once disciplined warrior of pain had turned into a junk food addict in less than 48 hours. Then came the first sign of weakness. A week into his new life, Goggins decided to do something he hadn't done since that first bite of the Big Mac: run. Maybe just a few miles, just enough to shake off the guilt, to prove to himself that he was still the Goggins people knew. He laced up his running shoes, stepped outside, took a deep breath, and sprinted forward. Except he couldn't. His mind screamed at him to push through, to stay hard. But the moment his feet hit the pavement, his body betrayed him. His lungs burned immediately. His knees felt like they were being crushed, and within half a mile, he was panting, something that hadn't happened to him in years. He stumbled to a stop, bent over, hands on his knees, gasping for air like a man who had never run a day in his life. "Holy, what the hell?" he panted, genuinely shocked at what had just happened. This was David Goggins, the man who ran 200 miles for fun, the man who did thousands of push-ups without breaking a sweat, the man who told people to conquer weakness and destroy excuses. And now, he was sitting on a park bench, wheezing. This should have been his wake-up call. This should have been the moment where he snapped back to reality, where he slapped himself in the face, screamed at his reflection, and became Goggins again. But instead, he walked home, slowly, and as he collapsed onto his couch, grabbing his phone with fingers still trembling from exhaustion, he ordered more food. 1 week turned into 2, then a month, then 2 months. The decline was so gradual, so insidious, that he barely noticed it happening. At first, it was just a few skipped workouts. Then, it was every workout. The alarm that once dragged him out of bed at 3 a.m. now rang into the void, ignored, silenced with the swipe of a lazy finger before he rolled over and sank deeper into the warm embrace of his pillows. The man who once trained until his bones screamed for mercy was now sleeping past noon. His famous mirror, the one where he used to stand, shirtless, glaring into his own soul, daring the weak version of himself to quit, was now covered with a towel. He couldn't look himself in the eye. The reflection staring back at him wasn't David Goggins, the hardest man alive. It was a stranger, a man he despised, a man who had given up. His social media? Dead. The world had noticed his absence. Fans who once flooded his comments with messages like "Stay hard, Goggins," and "You inspire me every day," were now asking, where is he? His inbox overflowed with unread messages, training partners, followers, people he once motivated, all desperate to know what happened. But he ignored them. Every notification, every missed call, every message was just another reminder that he had failed. His running shoes? Untouched. Dust gathered on them like gravesite dirt, burying the version of himself that once ran until his feet bled. The ultramarathon medals, the Navy SEAL trident, the trophies, the race bibs pinned to his walls, they all seemed like relics from another life, a life that belonged to someone else. His new battleground wasn't the scorching desert roads where he once tested his limits. It wasn't the pull-up bars that nearly broke his arms. It wasn't the cold showers or the ice baths or the pain caves he used to embrace. It was Netflix. Instead of conquering ultramarathons, he was conquering entire seasons of TV shows. He went from watching brutal military documentaries to romantic comedies. He sat there, night after night, wrapped in a blanket, mindlessly shoving snacks into his mouth as characters on screen lived out fake lives with fake problems. He was becoming one of them. Then came the final straw. One morning, his phone rang. A name flashed across the screen. A name he hadn't seen in months. Joe Rogan. His heart pounded. His hands trembled. He let it ring once, twice. He almost didn't pick up. Almost let it go to voicemail, just like all the other calls he had ignored. But something about Rogan calling hit differently. He swallowed hard and answered, "Goggins, man, where the hell have you been?" Rogan's voice was filled with concern, maybe even a little fear. "Dude, people are saying you disappeared. Are you training in secret? Are you about to do some crazy challenge?" David's mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes drifted down to himself, shirtless, belly sticking out, fingers covered in Dorito dust. His once ironclad abs, the battle-hardened body that had endured Hell Week 3 times, had softened into something he never thought possible, a gut. For the first time in his life, David Goggins felt true shame. Not the kind of pain he could push through, not the exhaustion that came from running hundreds of miles or doing thousands of pull-ups. This was worse. This was self-betrayal. This was the weight of every excuse, every shortcut, every moment of weakness he had ever sworn to destroy. His hands shook as he gripped the phone, his mind racing, screaming at him to snap out of it. But before he could answer, before he could tell Rogan anything, the truth crushed him like a heavy weight dropped onto his chest. He hung up. Silence filled the room. A single Dorito crunched beneath his fingers. This wasn't just a break. This wasn't just a setback. This was a collapse. Once David Goggins, the hardest man alive, the walking embodiment of discipline, the human version of a Navy SEAL Hell Week, had become something unrecognizable. He wasn't just slacking off. He had fully embraced the couch potato lifestyle. His body, once a finely tuned machine built for suffering, now felt like a rusty old truck that hadn't been started in months. The once unstoppable force of nature, who ran 100 miles on broken feet, now groaned when reaching for the TV remote. His running shoes, covered in dust, untouched, practically pleading to be worn again. His legendary pull-up bar, the one that had once seen him break world records, was now just a glorified laundry rack, draped with t-shirts and socks he no longer cared to fold. His once ruthless morning routine, which consisted of ice baths, 200 push-ups before sunrise, and screaming "stay hard" into the mirror, had been replaced with a new morning routine, hitting snooze 12 times and doom-scrolling TikTok until his brain was in. But this wasn't just laziness. This was a transformation, a full-blown identity crisis. One night, at 3 a.m., Goggins found himself standing in a dark place. Not mentally, but literally. The dim glow of his fridge illuminated his fallen kingdom. Empty fast food bags littered the counter, soda cans stacked up like some kind of sugar-fueled art installation. But his focus was locked on one thing, a half-eaten chocolate cake, sitting there, mocking him. He stared at it like it was a mortal enemy. His breathing was heavy, his hands clenched into fists. "You don't own me," he whispered. The cake didn't respond, but he knew. He knew it was calling to him. It was daring him to break. "One slice won't hurt," his mind whispered, the same way it had whispered before his first burger, his first skipped workout, his first excuse. Boom. The fork was in his hand before he even realized it. 1 bite, 2 bites, 3. The next thing he knew, he was leaned over the counter, hands covered in frosting, staring at an empty plate with wide, horrified eyes. "Who have I become?" he muttered, the words dripping with shame. From there, things spiraled fast. He embraced every terrible habit imaginable. He wasn't just ordering fast food. He was ordering it in bulk, not for the week, not for 2 days, but for a single night. His fridge became a graveyard of pizza boxes, empty milkshake cups, and burger wrappers. His pre-workout routine? Opening a family-size bag of Doritos. His hydration strategy? Drinking an entire 2-liter bottle of soda in one sitting. The mirror talks that once fueled his unbreakable mindset? Gone. Now he just stood there, staring at his growing belly, whispering, "Stay soft." At one point, guilt started creeping in. Deep down, he knew this wasn't who he was. He told himself, "All right, enough of this." He put on his old running shoes, the same shoes that had once carried him through ultramarathons, hell weeks, and sheer agony. But something was different. His feet barely fit in them anymore. Still, he laced up and stepped outside. He took a deep breath, feeling the cold air against his face. Time to take back control. He started to jog. 20 seconds in, he stopped, gasping for air. His lungs burned, but not in the way they used to. This wasn't the good pain. This was weakness. 30 seconds in, he was bent over, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath. 40 seconds in, he did something unthinkable. He called an Uber home. That night, he didn't even try to fight it anymore. He just sank deeper into the abyss. But then came the final straw, the moment that would haunt him forever. It happened at a gas station. He was standing in the checkout line, arms full of junk food, Doritos, Skittles, chocolate bars, Twinkies stacked up like he was preparing for the apocalypse. His hoodie was stained with Cheeto dust, his sweatpants loose around the ankles but tight around the waist. And then, it happened. A guy standing behind him recognized him. "Yo, David Goggins. Bro, you're a legend. I listen to you every morning." Goggins froze. His hands tightened around the Twinkies. Sweat dripped from his forehead. He looked down at himself, at the evidence of his downfall, at the wreckage of the man he used to be. For the first time in his life, David Goggins had no words. The guy smiled awkwardly, waiting. He expected something legendary, a speech, a battle cry, a challenge. But Goggins had nothing. No motivation, no fight, nothing. He just slowly turned around and walked out of the store. As he got into his car, he looked up at the rearview mirror. What stared back at him wasn't the beast he once was. This was it. Rock bottom. Part 4. Goggins' final form. The king of laziness, David Goggins, was now unrecognizable. Once a man who ran ultramarathons for breakfast, now a man who struggled to walk to the fridge without taking a break. The transformation was complete. No more wake-up alarms. His body clock was now synced with Netflix autoplay. No more motivational speeches. Instead, he started watching self-help videos on how to be productive without trying. No more running. The only steps he counted were the ones on his food delivery app. But the worst part? Goggins had developed a new mantra. Instead of screaming "stay hard" at himself, he now whispered, backhand index pointing right, "stay soft." The worst day of his life. One evening, Goggins decided to reward himself for all his hard work doing absolutely nothing. He prepared the ultimate meal. 1 extra large pizza, double cheese, triple regret, a gallon of soda, because one glass wasn't enough. 2 buckets of fried chicken for protein. A family-sized tub of ice cream. He was the whole family now. As he sat in his recliner, wrapped in a blanket like a human burrito, he took a deep breath. This is happiness, he whispered, shoving fries into his mouth. But then, something went wrong. Halfway through his 5th slice of pizza, Goggins felt strange. His stomach rumbled like a thunderstorm. Something inside him was rebelling. And then it happened. For the first time in his life, David Goggins got a cramp. Not just any cramp. The worst cramp known to mankind. His entire body locked up. His abs, or what was left of them, seized up. His arms froze. His legs wouldn't move. He was trapped in his recliner, holding a half-eaten drumstick. Help! He tried to scream, but his voice was muffled by a mouthful of donuts. He tried to wiggle free. Nothing. He tried to drink water, but all he had was soda, and that just made things worse. For 2 whole hours, David Goggins lay there, a prisoner in his own laziness. That's when he knew he had to escape this life. David Goggins, once a warrior forged in pain, a man who ran 100 miles for fun, who trained his body to ignore suffering, who laughed in the face of exhaustion, had now become something else entirely. He was unrecognizable. He was no longer the savage who screamed at himself in the mirror, pushing past his limits every single day. No, that man was long gone. Now, Goggins was a permanent resident of his couch, a disciple of laziness, the undisputed king of the soft life. His transformation was complete. His infamous 4 a.m. wake-up alarms deactivated. His once ruthless morning routine of 200 push-ups, ice baths, and motivational roars, replaced by hitting snooze 12 times and scrolling through TikTok until his thumb got tired. His running shoes, once soaked in blood and sweat from endless miles of training, now sat untouched, covered in a thick layer of dust, forgotten like an ancient artifact. At first, he told himself this was just a break, a short rest, a mental reset. But deep down, he knew the truth. David Goggins had fallen, and worst of all, he had a new mantra. Instead of standing in front of the mirror, veins bulging, screaming "Stay hard" at himself with primal intensity, he now whispered, with a weak, defeated voice, "Stay soft." One night, Goggins decided to celebrate his new life the only way he knew how, by throwing himself an all-you-can-eat solo feast. After all, he had worked so hard at doing absolutely nothing. Surely he deserved a reward. He set the scene. The lights dimmed. His recliner was in maximum comfort mode. His blanket, his armor of softness, was wrapped around him like a human burrito. He placed his weapons of destruction in front of him. 1 extra-large pizza, double cheese, triple regret, a gallon of soda, because hydration is important, 2 entire buckets of fried chicken, because he still told himself, protein is protein, a family-sized tub of ice cream, because he was the entire family now. Goggins sat back, surveying his kingdom of gluttony, feeling a strange sense of pride. This was it, peak relaxation. He had fought so hard for years, and now he could just enjoy life. He took a deep breath. This is happiness, he whispered as he shoved a handful of fries into his mouth, the grease dripping down his fingers like battle scars from his war against self-discipline. But then, something went wrong. Halfway through his 5th slice of pizza, Goggins felt strange. His stomach rumbled like an approaching storm. His body, once an unbreakable machine that could push through hours of brutal training, was rebelling against him. A sharp, horrifying pain shot through his entire body. And then it happened. For the first time in his life, David Goggins got a cramp. Not just a little cramp. Not the kind of cramp you shake off and keep going. No, this was the worst cramp known to mankind. His entire body seized up. His abs, or whatever was left of them, locked into place. His arms, frozen. His legs, useless. He was trapped in his recliner, holding a half-eaten drumstick. The pain was unbearable. It felt like his body had completely betrayed him. He had run ultramarathons on broken feet. He had done thousands of push-ups until his arms collapsed. He had endured Navy SEAL training multiple times. And yet, here he was, defeated by a pizza. He tried to scream, "Help!" but his voice was muffled by a mouthful of donuts. He tried to move. Nothing. He tried to wiggle free from the recliner. Nothing. The realization hit him like a truck. He was completely, utterly powerless. He reached for his water bottle to hydrate, but there was no water. Only a half-empty 2-liter bottle of soda. He took a sip, but that only made things worse. His stomach lurched. His vision blurred. And then, for 2 whole hours, David Goggins lay there, a prisoner of his own laziness, a fallen warrior drowning in his own failure. This was it. This was rock bottom. And as he lay there, staring at the ceiling, his mind drifted back to the man he used to be. The man who used to stare into the mirror and call himself out on his own weakness. The man who ran miles upon miles, fueled only by discipline and rage. That man was gone. Or was he? Because in that moment, deep inside the ruins of what used to be a savage, something stirred. A whisper. A voice he hadn't heard in months. Get the F*** up. It was faint, almost distant, but it was there. Are you really gonna let a damn pizza take you out, son? Goggins' fingers twitched. You used to run on broken legs. You used to push through pain that would make most men quit. And now you're telling me you can't stand up because of some damn fried chicken. A spark flickered in his soul. His body still hurt. His stomach was still bloated. His limbs still felt like bags of cement. But for the first time in a long time, David Goggins felt something wake up inside him. A primal force. An old, familiar rage. His fingers tightened around the recliner. His breath grew heavier. And then, with one final, earth-shattering roar, he ripped himself free. The blanket flew off. The soda can toppled over. The empty pizza box crashed to the floor. And there he stood, wobbly, weak, bloated beyond recognition, but alive. He stared at himself in the reflection of the TV screen. His gut stuck out like a badge of dishonor. His hoodie was stained with regret. His face was puffy, swollen from months of bad decisions. He took a deep breath. And then, for the first time in months, David Goggins screamed at himself. Get your lazy ass back to work. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of the comeback. David Goggins woke up with a fire in his soul. A fire that had been buried under layers of fried chicken grease, stuffed crust pizza, and gallons of soda. But now, that fire was raging again. The man who once lived for suffering, who thrived in pain, who screamed at weakness and chased discomfort like a madman. He was back. No more excuses. No more self-pity. No more stay soft. It was time to suffer again. Goggins exploded out of bed like a man possessed. No more hitting snooze 12 times. No more waking up at noon. No more rolling over and reaching for his phone first thing in the morning. No. Today, the first thing he reached for was pain. He stormed into the kitchen. Time for war. His fridge? Stocked with nothing but regret. Shelves overflowing with half-eaten cheesecakes, tubs of ice cream, and enough soda to power a small village. His cabinets? A shrine to junk food, chips, cookies, candy bars stacked to the ceiling. He stood there, staring at the battlefield before him, and then he snapped. One by one, he started purging his house of weakness. The chips? Gone. Torn open and dumped into the trash like they had personally insulted his ancestors. The sodas? Destroyed. One by one, he cracked them open and poured them down the sink, watching the carbonated poison swirl away, feeling the ghost of his former lazy self screaming in agony. The ice cream? Launched into the yard like a grenade. Somewhere, a raccoon would be feasting tonight, but that wasn't Goggins' problem. But then, he reached the cookies. A single pack of Oreos. His last temptation. His hand trembled as he picked it up. One cookie won't kill me. A small voice whispered in his head. He gritted his teeth, crushed the pack in his hands, and slammed it into the trash. Weakness had no place here. Next step? The digital purge. He grabbed his phone and deleted every single food delivery app. DoorDash? Gone. Uber Eats? Dead. Postmates? Eliminated. No more easy way out. No more tapping a screen and waiting for weakness to be delivered to his doorstep. And then, the final step. He turned to the corner of the room, the darkest, dustiest part of his house. There they were, his running shoes. They sat there like a forgotten relic from an ancient time, buried under months of neglect. Once, these shoes had carried him across ultramarathons, Navy SEAL Hell Weeks, and back-to-back 100-mile races. Now, they were covered in a thick layer of dust, as if mocking him. He bent down, grabbed them, and slammed them onto his feet. They barely fit anymore. His feet were swollen from months of inactivity and junk food. But that didn't matter. He was wearing them, and that was enough. Then, he reached for his old weighted vest. 40 pounds of pure suffering. He strapped it on and marched straight to the mirror. There he was, a bloated, weaker version of the man he once was. A man with Dorito-stained sweatpants and the ghost of a six-pack that had long disappeared. He looked himself dead in the eye. And then, without hesitation, "You did this to yourself," he roared. "Now it's time to pay." Boom. Goggins dropped to the floor. Push-ups. Non-stop. Not 10. Not 50. Not 100. He went until his arms failed. Until his chest burned like fire. Until the lazy, soft version of himself begged for mercy. And then, he kept going. Sit-ups. Squats. Burpees. He didn't need a gym. He didn't need a treadmill. He didn't need fancy equipment. All he needed was suffering. And then, when his body was screaming, when his muscles were on fire, when everything in him was telling him to stop. He ran. No warm-up, no preparation, no plan. He just took off. The first few steps? Agony. His joints felt stiff. His stomach jiggled in ways he wasn't used to. His lungs burned like they had been filled with pure junk food grease. But did he stop? Hell no. He ran until his legs felt like bricks, until his breath was ragged, until the lazy, weak, pathetic version of himself started dying with every step. And then, he pushed harder. Mile after mile, he forced himself forward. His mind screamed at him to quit. But he had spent his entire life ignoring that voice. This was his punishment. This was his redemption. By the time he finally collapsed, gasping for air, drenched in sweat, legs shaking like a newborn deer, he knew. He was back. Not fully, not yet, but the fire was alive again. And tomorrow? He would push even harder. David Goggins went on a rampage. The kind of rampage that would make ordinary men crumble. The kind of rampage that defied logic, reason, and basic human limitations. He didn't just work out. He declared war on his own weakness. He ran 100 miles in 1 week. Not because he had to, not because anyone told him to, but because the old Goggins had gotten soft, and that was unacceptable. He did 50,000 push-ups in a month. Every single rep was a punch to the gut of the pathetic version of himself that had once been trapped in a recliner, covered in Dorito dust. He switched from junk food to eating nails and gravel, probably. If it wasn't raw, bitter, and painful to consume, he didn't want it. Suffering was back on the menu. But despite all of that, despite the miles, the push-ups, the relentless assault on his own body, the real test didn't come during the day. It came at midnight. It happened. A voice, faint at first, slithered into his brain like a whisper from the devil himself. David, there's ice cream in the fridge. His eyes snapped open. His heartbeat quickened. He knew this voice. It was the same one that had once said, "One burger won't hurt." The same one that had tempted him into skipping runs, binge-watching TV, and drowning himself in junk food. It was old Goggins. And old Goggins wasn't dead yet. Goggins sat up, his body drenched in sweat, not from exhaustion, but from battle, a war raging inside him. His gaze locked onto the fridge across the room, a portal back to the life he had escaped, a test waiting for him. The temptation wrapped around him like chains. One step toward that fridge, and it was over. For 30 minutes, he sat on the edge of his bed, staring, his mind racing. It's just one bite. You've earned it. Come on, David. Just a little taste. The cravings clawed at his willpower like wild animals. His hands trembled, his breathing uneven. And then he clenched his fists. He stood, not slowly, not hesitantly, but like a soldier marching into battle. He stormed to the fridge, muscles tensed, rage burning in his eyes. With one swift motion, he threw the fridge door open. The cold air hit his face. The light flickered, illuminating his enemy, a pint of ice cream, cookies and cream, his greatest temptation. For a moment, his hand twitched, but then Goggins smirked. Without breaking eye contact, he reached in, grabbed a bottle of water, twisted the cap off, and took a long, slow sip. Ice-cold purity washed over him like a baptism of suffering. In a voice so low it was almost a growl, he whispered, "Not today, weakness. Not today." The old Goggins? Buried. The new Goggins? Unstoppable. Because pain is fuel, suffering is power, and weakness? Weakness has no place here. Stay hard.